Now, I received a couple of notes from you. We've been watching the new Donald Trump's got a critical minerals stockpile fund, a lot of breaking news. Where would you like to start?
I wonder about this stockpile event because it really it's it's theater. Okay, you see, developing a stockpile for any one thing is quite a bit of uh, work because you have to identify the material, obviously, then the form you're going to store, then you have to make sure that when you need the end user form that you require, that you have a processing company or companies in between that stored material and the form of it that you need. Now, if you're talking about stockpiling a variety of critical minerals and materials, this is an enormous amount of work, and it's certainly beyond the ability of anybody in the government to handle because just to give you an example, even steel comes in so many forms and there's so many specialties involved. I mean, are you going to store iron ore, pig iron, crude steel, formed steel ingots, rolled goods, the various forms? What is the chemistry of the steel? Is it going to be stainless steel? Is it going to be steel with some chrome, manganese, or some combination? Steel with rare earths? All of this talk about we're going to stockpile. It's speaking to the public as if all it takes is, well, we're going to need cement, so we'll store a whole lot of cement. Of course, you don't store cement; you store the ingredients to make cement. I don't understand what the government is talking about. I understand that they don't want to get into the details, but I think it's because they don't understand the details. If it's rare earths, the storage of rare earths is so complex that it's going to take some time to work out exactly what we mean by that. And we have no references. No one has ever stored rare earths. I have my own view of it from my own life experience, and it's a very complicated process. I just wonder what the government is talking about. It's the same every time. Politicians throw money at things and then they assume that problem is solved. All they're creating here is a huge problem of detail, and I don't hear anything about who's going to solve it.
Well, we're going to solve it in this conversation today, Jack. Let's start at the top. So it's my understanding that Trump's going to put $12 billion, okay, into the Strategic Critical Minerals Reserve, aka Project Vault. Okay, so Project Vault sounds like they're going to store it somewhere. Any idea where they might be storing this $12 billion of critical minerals?
Well, the US government has an agency called the Defense Logistics Agency, which is responsible for purchasing metal and materials. And they do store things, but it's the agency doesn't have warehouses, I don't believe. They would lease them or deal with the private sector, or in the case of the military, it would go to military storage. But they do have this agency, the Defense Logistics Agency, but this would completely overwhelm it. That agency only can buy things that are when there's an appropriation by Congress. So it doesn't go and say to the industry, "Hey, we're going to buy cobalt, and we want 1,000 tons." It gets a directive from Congress. So I assume this vault project will be, if it's funded by Congress, will be a directive from Congress to the DLA to acquire these things for a national stockpile. We do have national stockpiles, and so I can't imagine how they're going to do that. That would be the biggest appropriation in the history of the DLA, probably more than the DLA has bought in the last 50 years. They're going to need to be beefed up. They're going to need to find skilled people. This is going to be a cluster, you know what.
This is going to be a lot of fun for us to comment on, of course, with the same themes we've been hammering over and over and over again. But let's just start with the financing and the way that I read. They're going to do 10 billion in loans from Exim, U.S. Export Import Bank, plus about 2 billion in private investment. Now that was the intriguing part to me. Any idea where this private investment is coming from?
Well, I would guess it would be people who've invested in the various companies that are supposedly going to produce critical materials. Because once they identify a source, the share price of that source will skyrocket. It's already occurring even today. And so it's actually, if I were a hedge fund manager, I'd be looking for this. I'd say, I'm going to make this up. Let's say that I want to stockpile antimony. Well, there's only one antimony producer in the United States. So before I make the announcement that I'm going to stockpile antimony, I would buy up a lot of shares of the antimony company. And then I'd make the announcement. The shares go up. I sell them. I've made my money. That's my investment in the private sector.
I had a wonderful lunch yesterday with a gentleman that has a firm down in Washington, D.C. And when he was talking to me about critical minerals, because we were discussing how many that the U.S. currently has on this critical minerals list, and of course, how they're going to divvy up the $12 billion. He said on their list and their intel group, magnesium and antimony are number one and number two. What are your thoughts on his hit list?
Well, you see, I don't think we're producing magnesium in the United States right now, even though the Dow Chemical Company of Midland, Michigan, developed the technique for producing magnesium, which was the basis of that company. I know that of only one antimony mine in the United States that's producing, and it's been producing. So I don't know if I would call those two materials the top critical minerals, but I certainly would think they're near the top because the United States doesn't produce either. So it's critical that we get into the production. And what you're saying is that we're going to invest in companies who are going to produce these materials, but they're not producing them now. Isn't that interesting?
All right, let's go to our favorite topic, Jack, which is where are we going to find the talent? Where is the US government going to find the talent to decide what we're stockpiling here? Any ideas?
Yeah, for major metals, it's going to be easy. Okay, we have in the United States, we have Freeport, we have units of Rio Tinto, BHP, in Canada, Teck, Anglo American. These are the world's great producers of metals. Okay, now some of the metals these people produce are critical, such as copper. Okay, so if I want to stockpile copper, I don't have to lease any warehouses. I simply engage with the major copper producers in the United States and I hope Canada, and I say to them, you will reserve in your production X thousands of tons of copper, and we will pay for it, and we'll pay the storage. And when we tell you ship 500 tons of copper to X location, you do that on our behalf. This is how you have a stockpile with major producers. You don't take something from them, you reserve part of their production.
I noticed on the list of speakers, I saw Robert Friedland and Cameco. So we've got some Canadians there. So maybe they're taking your advice, Jack, and deciding that they need to work with the Canadians. Any comment on that? Because, of course, we've been hearing the buzz about all the secret meetings this week.
It's not my advice, it's common sense. Okay. What is the point of taking a commodity that's produced every day by a major well-financed company and bringing it to your warehouse to sit there? Okay, because these materials age. You don't want to buy something and stick it in the warehouse to age. That includes metals, believe me. So when you say to Robert Friedland, I want 1,000 tons of copper delivered to a copper wire drawer in Missouri in the U.S., he's not saying, okay, I'll look for my oldest stock. He doesn't keep that. He'll say, okay, the next 1,000 tons out are yours. So it'll be fresh, ready to go. That is the way to do it. Unfortunately, you can only do that with major metals, copper, aluminum, iron, steel. Okay. These are the things that are produced in huge quantities every day, and the turnover is very large. When you're talking about the next group of metals, the minor metals and the so-called micro metals, that's a problem because those are rarely produced. And so you need to store them, you need to bring them in, you need to store them, and you need to learn how to store them. So if you're going to have 20 critical metals, for example, you're going to need 20 sets of experts, experienced people, not academics, not bureaucrats, hands-on experienced people. I would suggest to the US government that they engage immediately with the New York and London stock exchanges. These fellows know a whole lot about storing physical material and moving it around, but they're not necessarily metallurgists. You need the metallurgists and the chemists who understand the life cycles of metals. Yes, they have life cycles. Metals are not normal in nature. We steal metals from nature, but we can't hold on to them very long. So we need all this expertise. And if maybe they've done it, I don't hear any commentary about we're going to form an expert team for each critical material and determine how we can store it, how we should buy it, how we should set the price. These metals are traded internationally on a daily basis in exchanges, the major metals. Okay. We don't set the price. The exchanges set the price. Okay? So this is a complicated situation. And I think I have to assume that the mainstream press doesn't understand anything about this. But I'm wondering if the government does. Throwing money at this is not the way to do it. You need to find expertise.
Well, I could not agree with you more, Jack. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us an update on this week's activities in Washington, D.C. and critical minerals. And for more information on the Critical Minerals Summit, where Jack Lifton will be a keynote speaker, please go to the following website. Thank you, Jack.